Welcome back to Third Eye Weekly. Today we're here with Terence Eden, who created a choose-your-own adventure story using the social media platform Twitter. Terence, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Of course. So, did you grow up reading choose-your-own adventure stories as a kid? What inspired you to start this Twitter creation?
I did, yes. I wasn't a huge fan of them growing up, but I definitely remember having them around and enjoying them. I think what inspired me more was perhaps the old games like Zork and some of those dungeon games where you'd run around trying to pick up axes and work out what to do with a locked box that you'd found. So it's much more, it's a mixture of those two influences, I think.
Did you have any idea that this would gain the kind of traction that it did?
No, not in my wildest dreams. I sort of wrote it over a weekend and tweeted about it. I don't know, about 11 in the evening, and by midnight I'd had like 100 or so retweets, and I was feeling really quite happy with myself. And I sort of woke up the next morning, and it had just gone everywhere. So I had no idea that it would catch so many people's imagination.
That's great. So, how did you go about designing it?
Well, I started off with an idea, and I just thought in my head, well, what if this, then that, and it quickly became apparent that you can't hold an idea like that in your head. So I tried drawing it out on paper, but that's not very satisfactory. So I ended up, I just did a search for lots of different tools, and I settled on this one called Inkle Writer, which is free. It's web-based, and you sort of say, okay, well, here's the first block of my story, and then here are two choices, and it will allow you to sort of physically draw choice 1 and choice 2 go like that, and then you can link them in all sorts of different ways. It was really quite easy. It only took a couple of hours to create the story as it was.
Was it difficult to manage the 23 separate accounts, or did you use and have?
Yeah, that was the hardest bit. So I'd had the idea a couple of weeks before launching it, and I thought, oh, that's fine, I'll just register a whole bunch of accounts. And I got through 3 or 4 when all of a sudden Twitter said, you need to verify yourself now. We've noticed lots of activity coming from your IP address. Please provide a phone number. Of course, my phone number's already tied to my Twitter account, and buying 23 phone numbers isn't that easy. So I sort of had a dig around, and I found all the old accounts that I had, and I put the call out on Twitter, and some friends gave me some of theirs. Managing the accounts was tricky because I hadn't switched off. You know, like when someone follows you on Twitter, you get an email, or if someone retweets you, you get an email. I had that on 23 accounts, all of which were being retweeted and followed by hundreds and hundreds of people, so my phone was just pinging every minute with, so-and-so said this about you on Twitter. So I had to go into each of those accounts and switch them off, which was a little bit of a chore. But, you know, once it was done, it was all fine.
I imagine it must have also been difficult to create these kind of creative storytelling passages using such a limited word count.
Yeah, it's a good exercise, I think, for any writer or creative person, is what can you do with a limited palette? You know, if you're a painter, what can you do if you can only paint in blue? If you're a storyteller, if you're limited to, well, realistically less than 140 characters, because you've got the overhead of saying, okay, but here's this choice and that choice pointing to these accounts. It was tough, and you have to make some dramatic and grammatic decisions that you might regret later, but it's a really worthwhile exercise, just seeing what you can cram into a tiny little space.
It's pretty easy to die repeatedly in all of your Twitter adventures.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I think, you know, people get used to the easy ride. Like if you've played Halo or any of these sort of first-person shooters, you sort of walk for a minute and then it says, oh, shoot this thing over here, and you can quite easily get quite far and think, oh man, I'm the boss of this game. Whereas this, I really wanted the second or third move, no matter what you did, to go, oh, I'm dead. And you know, this isn't designed to be easy. It's not even. It's designed to be fun, but not enjoyable, perhaps, I'd say. So I wanted to give people that sense of frustration. I think lots of video games now cater to the fact that people have spent, well, £50 or I guess $70 on a game, and you know they want a nice, easy, smooth intro. They don't want to be frustrated, otherwise they'll throw it out the window. With this, it's totally disposable. I wanted people to be frustrated. I got lots of emails from people going, I can't do it. What's going? When? It's like, good. Yes, you should be frustrated by a game occasionally.
So did you have the whole scenario kind of in mind when you were writing it, or did it reveal itself to you as you went along?
It didn't go where I thought it would go. I knew that I wanted it to be sort of dark and set in a city, and for there to be an unseen menace chasing you, but I didn't quite predict, and partly, as you say, because of the limitations of Twitter, I didn't quite predict where it would go. It was quite heavily inspired by a friend of mine who wrote this book called The Wanderer, which is very similar, the last person alive wandering through the world. So I knew I wanted it to have that feel, but no, I didn't quite know where it would go, aside from lots and lots of very sticky endings.
And what inspired the medieval art in all of the accounts?
So all of those come from tarot cards. So there are various, I don't know, tarot decks, I guess you'd call them, with very distinctive artworks. And it's the sort of thing where we're quite used to seeing some of them in the world, like, you know, death carrying a great big scythe like that, and a building being blown up. And some of them are slightly more esoteric, but I think they're quite resonant in that the imagery pops up in all sorts of places. So I wanted it to be something where you would see it and think, I half recognise that, perhaps. So yeah, so I just found some, I think it was Wikipedia, actually. I have a whole bunch of free tarot cards. Thanks, Wikipedia. So I just cropped the bits from there, which I thought looked particularly spooky.
So do you see future potential for unconventional storytelling with mediums like Twitter?
Absolutely. I think humans are storytellers. I think it was the late Terry Pratchett who said that we're not Homo sapien, we're pan-narans, we are storytelling apes. Whatever media you have, whether it's MySpace, Twitter, Facebook, whatever comes next, people will want to tell their stories in a slightly different way than before. I mean, if you go back to Homer's work, you know, this is all meant to be spoken epic poetry, and now it's trapped in books, and then very occasionally it becomes a radio series or TV or a film or interactive fiction. Stories just they find their own path through whatever media you're working with.
Well, that's all the questions we have today, Terence. Thank you so much for talking with us.
It's been an absolute pleasure.